Hello and welcome to the Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. We've got another amazing guest on our show today. He is a former KGB spy, a Fortune 500 business mentor and keynote speaker, and is the ultimate authority on influence, human behavior, and leadership. Welcome to the show, Jack Barsky. How are you doing today?
Hey, good to see you. We are already pre-existing friends, but it's good to see you on
Yeah.
this new podcast.
Oh, this is going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, I have just wanted to pick your brain for a while now. Like, it's not every day you run into somebody who has the story that you have. And just for the people who haven't heard about yourself, how do you go from being a KGB leader to living and thriving in America and not being imprisoned or taken out? What
Uh,
is Jack Barsky's original story here?
right, but first of all, I do have to correct you. I wasn't a KGB leader ever. I was a single operator. I
Single
was a
operator.
lone wolf, undercover illegal in the United States, which is the toughest job when you talk about using your head to do intelligence. Is the toughest job there is. I never used any weapons. I didn't wasn't involved in car chases and stuff like that.
Right.
To be all by yourself and make decisions without having folks to discuss it with in enemy territory, so to speak, where you are if a bad decision could wind you up, could wind you being in jail. So.
Right.
Uh, well, and I came to the United States at the age of 26, and I had with me a certified copy of the birth certificate of one Jack Barsky, who had passed away at the age of 11. We stole that identity. So, and my primary task was, and so you ask how you get from KGB to corporate America and being successful there. That was one of my tasks. I was supposed to integrate as well as possible. So I got a second college degree. I graduated with a master's in chemistry in East Germany, where I came from originally, and then I went to college in the U.S. and I got a bachelor's in business administration and with a focus on information technology, and I made it into a very successful career. Um, so that helped me then build my version of the American dream when I said goodbye to the KGB. Now the question always comes up: how do you say goodbye to the KGB?
Right.
By doing one of the things that they hired me for is the ability to lie with a straight face and be
Uh,
an extremely inventive liar. So anticipating inconsistencies in the lie or inconsistencies in the lie with other things in your life.
so
So
how did the KGB identify you and then bring out this dark
uh,
skill you have?
well, I don't think it's that dark. I never used lie or manipulation to hurt to deliberately harm somebody else.
Okay.
I may have harmed people, but I'm not aware of this. But so I just want to make sure that I'm not as evil as I appear to be.
Well,
so
a lot of this, though, is kind of that zoom in, zoom out approach. Like, we've got all these political ideologies, and then we've got individual skill sets or trust and interactions with peers and the people
yeah,
around us, whether they're
well,
friends or foes. So
the
we'll
the
kind of use that as a theme throughout this podcast here, is that zoom out, zoom in, and somewhere in between, of course, is where the magic of performance happens. Um, but back to kind of your story here. So you're infiltrated, uh, given the task by the KGB to find information out in the US. And what sort of
No,
information
I'm
were you
sorry.
finding?
I need to correct you there again.
Okay.
My task was to primarily be a sleeper in case diplomatic relations would be broken up between the U.S. and the United States, and all the other spies in addition, outside of the illegals, and there were very few of us, maybe two or three. Uh, all the other spies were diplomats, so we were supposed to be embedded in enemy territory in case, and whatever that meant, there could have even been war.
Okay.
And the other thing that I was tasked primarily was to spot talent, so to speak, people that would be of interest to recruit and find, because they either already had access to secrets or they would down the road in their professional career get access to secrets. So that was primarily the task, not to find secrets myself.
Fair
Because,
enough. Now, this is where the human behavior and leadership side of you comes out, isn't it? Um, and we mentioned trust earlier. Now, just being kind of out in the professional world for a long time, I think the whole concept of trust is actually kind of a misnomer. Is that, and just we'll get your perspective on this because I'm dying to hear it. Actually, is that I trust human behavior more than I trust words or what people are saying. Can you kind of speak to that fashion? What is trust and what is human behavior then?
100% correct. Now, you know, trust to me means that when I'm dealing with an individual, it's not predictability, but it is what they say is what they mean. This is what's in their head, and I have to. And this develops over time, and it has to do with, you know, doing what you say, behave, and not changing your opinion, what you say all the time. Be consistent, be authentic. Uh, don't show up uh, depending upon who you're interacting with. You know, be yourself even when nobody's watching, which that's obviously not possible. But just be whole. Uh, and that takes a while to develop. Now there's two types of people. There are trust extenders and there are trust deniers.
What do you mean by
So
that?
a trust extender approaches a new person trusting that they are the real deal. Okay, trust deniers will always not trust you at all because they think they're lying to you, and you always have to be suspicious. Which, if taken to extreme, uh, be becomes paranoia, and I couldn't live with paranoia. So I'm with uh, I'm with Ronald Reagan, who famously said, "Trust but verify."
Ah,
And
so you're in between there because you
oh,
would have
absolutely.
been in periods of time where you were probably close to being paranoid if and
No,
very untrusting, more weren't
no,
you?
you cannot. No. I'm
No?
sorry to disagree with you. If you're paranoid in that job that I performed, you will fail.
Oh,
Fear,
okay.
fear must not be part of your. Of your day. I had very few high stress moments, and I had maybe two or three moments when I truly feared, not necessarily for myself, but for my family. Uh, that's one of the reasons that they picked me. They were looking for fearless people, and you asked me how they found me. They literally scanned. Um, that's based on interviews that were given after the KGB had fallen apart by folks who were running the illegals department, they were literally scanning hundreds, if not thousands, of people that had a certain set of abilities, inborn abilities, character traits that were necessary to survive in this particular job. And I fit the bill. There was about 10 of those, and fearlessness was one of them. Quick thinking, and they didn't say it like that, but they mentioned something like being very good at dealing with fluid situations. That means like coming up with a lie on the spot to get out of a difficult situation.
Absolutely. What were the maybe? Well, are we down to seven other traits? Uh, do you know these, or are they in your book?
I keep on, and I would have to look at my notes. I'm very bad these days at memorizing facts.
Fair
But
enough. Fair enough. Now, these all sort of came natural to you, or were you also coached or trained on
no,
some of
no,
these
that's not trainable.
skills?
This stuff is not trainable. It's
Okay.
uh, it's see, when you have a musical talent,
Mhm.
you have a musical talent. Some people don't. They can never sing a song without being off key. I had a mother-in-law like that. When she sang, I had to run out of the house. So you have a talent, but you also can improve the performance of that talent by practicing. Okay, so
Right.
they were looking for the raw talent, and the practicing came actually after I was deployed, because
Now
you can't.
you were first deployed to Canada, weren't you?
No, there was a practice trip. It
Oh, okay.
was not deployment. It was a practice trip because I was supposed to get a flavor of what it was like to enter the United States, so I wouldn't be totally shocked.
Uh,
But here's the thing. I just want to continue that thought.
yeah. Once you were deployed, what was the training then, or the
There was
process?
no training. They were looking for people who could self-train. You can't
Ah,
listen. There's this legend that there's some place outside of Moscow. There was this village that was built like an American village, and they trained people to be like Americans. BS. If
didn't
they had
happen.
If they had that, I would have been there. Okay, so you couldn't train how to be an American. Clearly could learn the language really well, but how to behave like an American, you couldn't train any of this. It was all self-trained, including that may be a surprise. I never got a psychology test that was given by the KGB. I never once met a KGB psychologist, and I got no training with regard to people skills, psychology, reading people, all this. They all, based on the set of traits that they were looking for, they really were convinced that I would work that out. And in my case, it did work. I'm not sure that everybody else succeeded the way I did, because here I am. Most people cannot distinguish me from a born American, and I was born in East Germany and spent my first 26 years there.
Wow. So, were you at all apprehensive then when you first got here, or was
Nah,
it flow for you? Like
nah,
how did you start to really
it,
get your bearings?
it was flow is maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but apprehensive, no, because you see, I had a history of being successful as a young person, as a child, young man, and also young adult, at being successful, really highly successful at everything that I touched. And that included making myself into from zero, starting at the age of 18, from zero into the starting lineup of the college basketball team. And I was so everything that I touched, I was best student. I was even when I came to the U.S. I worked as a bike messenger. It was my first job. I became the best bike messenger in New York City. So I had this string of successes, which builds optimism. It's not arrogance. It's just like you take on something new because you know it's gonna work.
I love it.
If you go in with apprehension, it most likely won't work. You know that I in my corporate career, I had 6 management jobs in 6 different companies that operated in 3 different industries and used all kinds of different technologies. And every time I stepped in there, I stepped in with, like, yeah, that's going to work. It's going to be fun.
So
It's an
so
attitude.
so on that point though, weren't you like born basically to be more successful in, say, a capitalistic society than in a communistic?
Yes, you bet. That's
So,
a
so,
really
so was
that's
the
a really good
Soviet
guess.
Union just trying to get rid of you?
That that's a really good guess because I was from childhood on. I was anti-authoritarian. I almost
Ah,
got kicked out of high school because I questioned authority too much in class. Okay, so but I had learned to fit in. Absolutely, I was meant to be here, not there.
so what would, if your life was different and the KGB never recruited you? How do you think it would have ended up for you? Like if you went through those scenarios in your brain, like living in the Soviet Union under repression,
If
what do
I
you think?
if that life had continued the way it was laid out, if I am still alive, I would be a miserable old man someplace in Russia. I had 2 career. At the time the KGB approached me, I was going to be a college professor.
Okay.
That would have worked out pretty well, but it turns out that teaching would have been okay, but I wouldn't have been a very successful scientist. But there's a big but. There was most likely I would have joined the government because I was a very active member of the Communist Party, and and I was recruited to take the job as deputy secretary of the youth movement of the entire university. You know where that would have led? Government.
Uh,
And the question, I wouldn't have said no because I was so impressed with myself. I was an elitist as long as I belonged to the elite. Now I'm totally anti-elitist, but I was going to join the elite and help all the dummies that can't, in society that can't make their own decisions, help them to live their best life. That's of course an idiotic idea. So and I can't predict whether I would have figured out that things are not the way they told us. But once you join the elite, you become corrupt because you get to enjoy the good life, and you want to hang on to that. So thank God the KGB stepped in and got me out of this.
now, in that aspect, though, you have kind of enjoyed the good life, though, haven't you?
After I
Um,
quit the KGB.
okay. So what was kind of the catalyst there? Like it was like, okay, well, I'm repressed enough. I'm in this opportunity where I can do what I want, or
Well, it was rather seamless transition because, as I told you, I was supposed to fit in with society. My first corporate job was as a computer programmer, and in those days, I was a very very sharp thinker, and I did very well. And within a year, I made enough money to buy my first home,
must have been a
and
great
that,
feeling.
oh, you bet. And I bought that home after I quit the KGB. So I had a family. I had a wife and a daughter, and we moved into this home. And then we had another son. And at that point, because that was after the wall came down, and I had finally had a chance to do some research as to what the heck happened, and I found out that the whole communist ideology, the whole existence of East Germany and the Soviet Union was all a big lie. So I had moved from being an ardent communist to not necessarily an anti-communist, but more like somebody who wouldn't mind to live in a welfare state. But I didn't
Oh,
act like I wanted to be in a welfare state. I just kept on going, and I had a career that was um, I was always recruited, and I was always recruited to fix something.
okay.
Um, so fix organizations. So
Now let's go into that because there's all sorts of podcast interviews where you've done a lot of conversation on the different ideologies of politics.
yeah,
And of course, communism versus capitalism, everything but in between, and then the doctrines, the propaganda that happens in both arenas.
yeah,
But we're talking about organization of people. And everybody here um, has some role with that. And we talked about your interpersonal skills and being able to read people, being able to communicate, whether it was lying, whether it was trust. But how does this play into where most people spend their lives? And that's going to be at their job. Now, jobs aren't democracies, and they're sometimes compared to communism or dictatorships. And you've been in these roles, and you've been a former communist and capitalist. Where does kind of these ideas
yeah.
come into play with
That's
what affects us most in everyday life, which is leadership and organization of people?
yes, and the very top leadership is responsible to set the tone and the culture in their organization. And quite frankly, not too many of our leaders are doing that great a job. People are much more productive and much more successful if they have a reason other than making money to do their job. If they
So,
have a
so how
passion,
much of that reason is a lie versus actual reason then? Because you've been in all of these, and you've been disenfranchised with lies, and then
yes,
you've personally admitted you're great at lying.
unfortunately, all the mission and vision statements that I have encountered were a bunch of BS.
How so?
Nobody, no employee would hang them framed on a wall. Okay.
Uh, I agree.
Now that doesn't mean I was in large companies. Okay,
Right.
and these large companies um, tend to have a disease that's called a hierarchy. I call that a hierarchy because hierarchies very quickly they start out small and then they get bigger and bigger and they become dysfunctional and bureaucratic, and then you got consultants and HR people coming in, and it's all there's a lot of manipulation, and guess what? The employees know that that when the CEO BS's them in an all employee meeting, uh, that's what it is. The same thing happened to us in East Germany when our communist leaders were coming out in public, even though even party members would ignore what they had to say because we knew it was propaganda. So in order to combat this, you have to be authentic and real. Like for instance, I liked the when Google first came out, I liked their statement, "Do no harm."
Right.
That sounds like something I can embrace. But again, it's got to be real, and it has to be it has to become specific and it has to become the guiding light for how you operate. And this is where the conflict comes in. I have an old employee of mine, a really smart guy who reported to me. He works for one of the major pharmaceutical companies, will not be named. And he's out on LinkedIn and constantly singing the praise of how that company does so much good for the people. And I call him on this. You are profit driven. You got to admit this, because if you're not profit driven, you can't exist. So you have to at least find a combination. But you don't hide the profit motive. You have to admit to it, because that's the only way in history for societies to become successful: competition and profit. Okay, but you got to find a way to combine this with something that also speaks to the heart. And I don't even know why pharmaceuticals can't do that, because they're doing a lousy job in terms of their PR. They're not well liked, as we both know.
No, they're definitely in a period where they're getting a lot of bad attention, and once again, yeah, people are calling BS on things. Is my perspective on it, and is there a period of chaos then, and that it is going to kind of be this natural order of revolution, a period of calm, elitism, and then chaos, and repeat the cycle? Or is there something better out there? Or is this just something
Well, I tell
that's
you
human
what,
nature?
you seem to be hacking my brain here, because I was going to tell you something that can be better. And because I have come to the conclusion that when you're dealing with people, you must deal with individuals, not members of a particular group.
Right.
Now, how does a CEO of a large company do that? Well, it's really simple. Uh, and let me just explain this a little further, because nowadays, even in the United States, uh, we are so organized into groups, and groups are following a particular ideology. That doesn't have to be communism or capitalism. It has to be, fight global warming, or save the whales, or whatever, save the puppies. And if you define yourself as an we are all individuals. There's nobody like you and nobody like me. Uh, so if you define your own self as a member of a group, and follow a particular ideology, you lose what's part of the essence of being human. It's individuality. So now, getting back to the corporate hierarchy, and most organizations, as soon as they get to a certain size, have become hierarchies. You need to deal with the folks that are directly reporting to you as individuals, and encourage them to do the same down the line. And you need to really, really watch that. Uh, it's hard,
Oh, massively.
and it's demanding, because now you need to develop something. If you don't have it already, you need to something called empathy. Empathy means not feeling your pain. It means understanding what makes you tick, and understanding your pain, and deal with it. And I managed all my teams that way. And I had and I didn't want to collect a bunch of followers, but I had people follow me. I didn't invite them to follow me,
Right.
because they knew they could trust that will take care of them. And to the extent I was able to trace that. Um, and I managed. I mean, I had some large organizations. To the extent I could, I actually had one-on-ones with each member of the larger team. But to the extent I could trace it, they because of the way they were treated, they were trying to adapt the same method of management. Not everybody can do this, and then you have to figure out whether they're in the right spot. Now
Right.
that's just my humble opinion, and that's how I was successful, and I was very successful in crisis management. I wasn't very successful in steady state when the management, when the politics come in, and you have like Monday meetings and Tuesday meetings and Wednesday meetings, and next Monday you talk about the same subject that you talked about the previous Monday.
Oh,
It's
I hear
when
you.
the BS comes in,
Yeah.
and
So once again, such an amazing life, and a lot of this is going to be in your book, Deep Undercover. But what I'm really interested about then is what is kind of Jack Barsky's legacy? Like, what do you want to leave the world with after kind of bouncing around from these huge entities and with your experience in different political ideology and then leadership and in people skills?
well, first of all, as you know, I give talks, public talks, and depending on the audience and depending on what the client wants, I have different flavors of my talks. You know, there's some people who like to hear about history, which is fundamentally not a bad idea because
Right.
uh, the United States, the population of the United States, is severely undereducated when it comes to world history, even U.S. history. And as they say, if you don't know history, don't understand history, you're liable to repeat it, and we really shouldn't go there. It's we were talking about history of the U.S. We once had a civil war, and if we keep on, being bifurcated here, like Republicans and Democrats, and that gets ratcheted up, that can get really ugly. So that would be one topic. I also have a topic where I share with primarily business people. I call it applied spycology. Uh, the skills that I used and that I acquired self-taught, so talents and skills, right? In the espionage world, how that made me successful in the corporate world. There were quite a few parallels. Again, we're dealing with people, right?
Right.
And spies are people too.
Yes.
So I do that, and lately um, I I was approached by a bunch of friends to tell me like, let me restart this. Um, I've always I have teaching in my blood. That's why I wanted to be a professor. I tutored people in high school and in college. I when I my management style was a teaching style, mentoring style, and once I was out of corporate, I was focused on speaking. But now that I have a really really big network, including the one that you and I belong to, I have inadvertently mentored really bright, successful people, and they came back to me and said, "Well, it was very interesting to hear what you have to say about this," and blah blah blah. So I was now a bunch of people approached me and says, "Why don't you make this into a practice?" And that's where I'm at. And so now I'm aligning with what I love doing and what I can do best with creating value. So I don't need to BS around. And so my legacy is to just help others, because you know about the concept of love languages.
Yes.
Uh, my primary love language is service. So is serving others and help them to do the same thing and pass it down the generation. And the and and of course, my legacy are also my children. which turned out to be very, very successful in their own careers. And I have a 14-year-old, which will probably surpass all of my lineage because she's super, super smart. So that when you talk about legacy, I don't I don't need a street named after me. I don't really care whether my book is still being read unless it's of value to people.
Right.
I just care that I leave a trace in in humanity that helps make humanity better, and we have a long way to go to get there, and it's going to be a struggle.
So with that being said, the people that are like, yeah, I've got to listen to Jack, the mentorship, the education side of it. Where do they find you? Where do they get this information then?
Just go to my LinkedIn profile.
Mhm.
That's where you can find most of it. And LinkedIn, you can just search for me, or you go to LinkedIn. It says /in Jack Barsky. It's real simple, and I'm easy
Perfect.
to.
And we'll put that in the show notes. So check out Jack's book, Deep Undercover, and reach out to him on LinkedIn. And stay tuned to the next episode of The Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. Take care.
That